Black woman removed from VIP seat for a white passenger. One call later, the entire staff is fired. Have you ever witnessed a moment so outrageously unjust that your heart pounded with disbelief? Imagine a high-profile black woman, a brilliant CEO recognized globally for her achievements, being yanked from her rightful VIP seat to make way for a white passenger. The scene is filled with gasps, heated whispers, and stares of shock. But what if that single act triggered an explosive chain of events no one saw coming? One phone call that toppled an entire staff and turned an airline upside down. Stay with me, because what unfolds next is a twisting tale of power, pride, and the fierce force of karma. Amara Winfield was not just any CEO. She had defied every expectation, broken every glass ceiling, and shattered every prejudice that threatened to box her in. In her 38 years, she had gone from a humble upbringing in a struggling neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta to leading one of the country's fastest-growing tech companies. As a young girl, Amara spent hours tinkering with old computers rescued from local thrift stores, fueled by an unquenchable curiosity. Her mother, a single parent, worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Even as bills piled up and hardship loomed, she taught Amara to keep her head high and her focus sharper. By the time Amara reached high school, she was devouring books on programming and engineering. She often found herself reading library books about visionary entrepreneurs, from Steve Jobs to Oprah Winfrey, trying to glean pearls of wisdom. At 16, she got a scholarship to an advanced STEM camp. At 22, she graduated at the top of her class from Georgia Tech, having already completed an internship at Tesla, where her performance dazzled everyone from the interns up to the senior engineers. But it wasn't merely intellect that propelled Amara. It was her unwavering grit. She built her startup, Solar Swift Technologies, from scratch. The idea was bold: create low-cost solar energy solutions for urban communities that often lacked affordable, sustainable energy sources. At first, investors balked, but that changed when J.P. Morgan Chase invited her to pitch at a crucial investors summit in New York. Captivating the audience with her vision, she landed enough capital to develop her prototypes. Within 5 years, Solar Swift soared to national prominence, eventually branching out to other green tech solutions. By year 7, the company boasted offices in 4 major U.S. cities. By year 10, it was recognized among the top innovators at the annual Forbes Sustainability Gala. And at the helm of all that success stood Amara, poised, radiant, and unstoppable. Outside of business, she valued mentorship. She visited schools in struggling neighborhoods, encouraging young people, especially young women of color, to think bigger. Her philanthropic initiatives earned her recognition from local and national publications. And while money and fame inevitably followed, she remained grounded and accessible. Everyone who met her described her as both brilliant and refreshingly warm. It was partly for philanthropy, partly for an upcoming business expansion, that she found herself booking a flight to Chicago on that fateful Friday morning. She was slated to give a keynote speech at the Women in Tech Summit, then meet with prospective partners about launching an eco-friendly tech accelerator in the Midwest. With her hectic schedule, she never left any detail to chance, especially air travel. She booked a first-class seat on a well-known airline, which, for the sake of anonymity, we'll call High Skis Airlines. After the conference, she planned to meet a prospective major investor for Solar Swift, none other than a high-ranking executive from J.P. Morgan Chase. This was a big moment, but for Amara, it was one of many. She had grown accustomed to big moments. Still, she was excited. She loved Chicago in the fall, the crisp air, the energy of the city. This trip was also a reunion of sorts with a dear friend she hadn't seen in years. Everything felt aligned. She couldn't have imagined how a single, shocking encounter in the VIP lounge at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport would change the day, and possibly her life. Arriving at the airport that morning, Amara was calm and collected. Dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, hair impeccably styled, she exuded confidence. Her personal assistant, Mika, had arranged for her to have lounge access, express security clearance, and additional seat upgrades if needed. She was all set, or so it seemed. Hartsfield-Jackson, the busiest airport in the world, hummed with endless motion. Passengers bustled to and fro, announcements crackled overhead in a cacophony of languages, and the smell of fresh coffee wafted through the halls. Amara quickly navigated toward the Highskis Airlines VIP lounge, scanning her phone for updates. Mika had texted her about a possible meeting with an influential venture capitalist who happened to be traveling on the same day. The opportunity to casually network excited Amara. Despite her success, she never missed a chance to forge new connections. Inside the VIP lounge, the atmosphere was polished and tranquil. Plush seating, discreet staff offering refreshments, and large windows that overlooked the runways. Amara settled into a comfortable leather seat near a window, quietly sipping her herbal tea. It was a moment of peace before a whirlwind of engagements in Chicago. She noticed a few people glancing at her. She assumed it was because of her well-known public profile. Over the years, her face had appeared in multiple magazines and websites. Sometimes people recognized her. Sometimes they only sensed that she must be someone important. In the lounge, she received polite smiles, the occasional nod, nothing out of the ordinary. But then she noticed the staff behind the check-in counter whispering to each other. Two women and a man, each in crisp airline uniforms, kept shooting furtive glances in Amara's direction. The man, a tall individual with sharply parted hair, whispered something that made his colleagues smirk. Something felt off, but Amara shrugged it off. After all, she was used to occasional stares, whether from admirers or skeptics. It came with the territory of being a high-profile black woman in elite circles. After a few minutes, one of the female staff members strode purposefully across the lounge and approached Amara. Her name badge read Bianca. She forced a tight-lipped smile, the sort that never touched her eyes. "Miss Winfield?" she asked, her voice polite yet tinged with tension. "Yes," Amara replied, folding her hands in her lap. "Is there an issue?" Bianca glanced around as though checking if anyone else was listening. Then she looked back down at Amara. "Could you come with me to the check-in desk? There's a matter with your seat assignment." Amara's stomach did a slight flip. Matter with my seat assignment? She had paid top dollar and had her e-receipt. Sure, let's see what's going on. As she approached the desk, she noticed the other two staff members stiffen. The man whose name tag read James avoided her gaze, while the other woman, Kelsey, busied herself with a computer. Bianca kept her polite facade, but there was a perceptible friction in the air. "We've encountered an overbooking situation," James finally said, tapping at his keyboard with unnecessary force. "Our system indicates that your seat was erroneously booked." Amara frowned. "Erroneously? How so?" "I booked well in advance, and I have the confirmation on my phone." He nodded, glancing fleetingly at her screen. "Yes, we see that. However, due to a VIP client flying with us today, we have to reassign your seat to accommodate them. They purchased a last-minute first-class upgrade, and we're required to accommodate Diamond Elite members first." Her heart sank, replaced by a surge of indignation. She'd heard of overbooking fiascos, but had never personally experienced such blatant seat reassignments, especially when she, too, was a recognized frequent flyer with Highskis. She inhaled slowly, controlling her temper. "I'm also a Diamond Elite member. I've got nearly 1,000,000 miles with Highskis. Are you saying my loyalty means less than someone else's?" Kelsey, still tapping on her computer, quipped, "That's the policy, Miss Winfield. It's not personal." Not personal. Those words hit like an insult. "I fail to understand. I booked this seat well in advance. I am a Diamond Elite member, and now you're telling me I can't sit in the seat I paid for because someone else, apparently more important, came along?" Bianca cleared her throat. "We have a lot of VIP clients. Sometimes changes happen last minute." Amara felt a fire igniting in her chest. She was well acquainted with airline policies, fine print, and the typical disclaimers they used. But what baffled her was the brazen nature of their approach. And you're telling me that I, with all my miles, status, and money spent, have to step aside for this other passenger? James nodded curtly. Yes, we'll rebook you in business class or potentially economy, depending on seat availability. Our apologies. Those words stung. She felt simultaneously embarrassed and enraged. High Skis was well aware of her loyalty. She'd flown with them countless times. She also happened to be a recognized figure, though she rarely flaunted that. But it seemed all of a sudden they were determined to treat her as though she were nobody. She wondered if race was a factor. The fact that they'd said someone else apparently more important made her insides churn. She raised her chin, exuding composure. I'd like to speak to a supervisor. James and Bianca exchanged a glance, and Kelsey snickered under her breath. The supervisor is on break. Besides, Miss Winfield, the flight is boarding in just 30 minutes, Bianca said, in a tone suggesting that time was running out and Amara's cooperation was mandatory. Amara pursed her lips, forcing herself to remain civil. Then you need to find me a seat in first class. If you're overbooked, move someone else. I'm not leaving this lounge until I get what I paid for. The staff locked eyes in a silent exchange. Then James shrugged, handing her a new boarding pass. We've reseated you in business class, 4B. It's still premium. Here you go. Amara glanced at the boarding pass. She had purchased 1A, a plush VIP seat that allowed more privacy and convenience. She also had dietary preferences for that seat. She had crucial documents to review, calls to make. Not to mention, she had paid top dollar for it. Now she was being cast aside as if she were a second-class citizen. Just as she was about to press further, James stepped away, saying, You can use your lounge privileges until boarding, but we can't do anything else at this moment. Feeling tension knot in her shoulders, Amara decided to regroup. She didn't want to lose her composure in the middle of the VIP lounge. Public outbursts could become media fodder. She let out a steadying breath and texted Mika, hoping her assistant might intervene with a phone call to High Sky's corporate line. But for the moment there was little she could do but wait. Little did she know that the situation was about to escalate far beyond a seat reassignment. Boarding time approached. The lounge had emptied out somewhat as passengers moved toward the gate. Amara, still shaken, collected her carry-on and proceeded to the boarding area. Her mind whirled with possible outcomes. Perhaps she could reason with the gate agent, or maybe the cabin crew would find a solution. After all, she'd never encountered a problem quite so blatant. As she arrived at the gate, she saw an elegant older white gentleman boarding with a smiling gate agent. He seemed pleasant enough, but on his lapel was a shiny diamond elite pin. That must be the VIP they gave my seat to, she thought. She recognized him vaguely. He might have been a known figure in international banking, or so her memory hinted. Part of her wanted to approach him directly and see if he would cede the seat, but she didn't want to cause a scene. Instead, she approached the gate agent, hoping to clarify if any seats in first class had opened up. When she handed the agent her boarding pass, the woman glanced at her screen and then shot her a condescending smile. Business class, yes, right down that way. Enjoy your flight. Amara attempted a polite approach. I was originally booked in first class, seat 1A. There seems to have been a mix-up. Is there any chance that first class might have availability now? The agent's smile never wavered, but her eyes flickered with annoyance. I'm sorry, Miss Winfield, but first class is at capacity. Please board now or we'll have to close the doors. Amara took a moment to glance behind her. A line was forming, with a few passengers casting impatient looks. She had no desire to delay everyone else. She swallowed her frustration and walked down the jet bridge to her new seat in business class. She comforted herself with the thought that in the grand scheme of things, she'd survive this inconvenience and still make her meeting in Chicago. But what happened next shattered that fleeting optimism. When she arrived at seat 4B, she found someone else's items already stowed, a large purse on the seat and a laptop bag underneath. Confused, she double-checked her boarding pass. 4B. She verified that the seat label was indeed 4B. She tapped the shoulder of a flight attendant who was walking down the aisle, a tall blonde woman whose name tag read Janet. "Excuse me," Amara said politely. "There seems to be someone else in my seat." Janet glanced at the seat and then at the occupant, a woman wearing oversized sunglasses and ignoring the chaos around her. "Ma'am," Janet addressed the woman, "may I see your boarding pass?" The woman huffed, rummaging through her bag before handing it over. "I'm in 4B, she declared confidently, except her boarding pass said 4A. Janet frowned. "Your seat is 4A, Miss Cunningham." The passenger folded her arms, not budging. "Yes, but 4B is more comfortable and I've already settled in." Amara felt a new wave of exasperation. She remained calm, trying to reason with the flight attendant. "I have the boarding pass for 4B. Could you please ask her to move to her assigned seat?" Before Janet could respond, Miss Cunningham sneered. "I'm not moving for her. What's the big deal anyway? There's a seat next to me. Let her sit there if she wants." She flipped her hair dramatically. Janet looked stricken, eyes darting between Amara and the obstinate passenger. "Ma'am," she said politely, "please move to 4A. 4B is this lady's seat." Miss Cunningham narrowed her eyes. "This is about me being white, isn't it?" she said, throwing a sideways glare at Amara. "These seats are all the same in business class. She can sit next to me if she wants. I'm not moving just because some staff wants me to." Amara's jaw clenched. The flight attendant looked uneasy. A few other passengers in business class were now watching the exchange. Murmurs spread, and Amara could sense the tension. She forced herself to remain composed, aware that any heated reaction from her might be misconstrued. "Ma'am, please, it's not about race," Amara said, trying to keep her voice level. "It's simply the seat I was assigned." Janet, looking desperate, mumbled, "I'm sorry, Miss Winfield, but let me see if we can seat you somewhere else." That was the breaking point. "Somewhere else again?" Amara repeated, stunned. "I was already bumped from first class. Now you want me to move for a second time because this passenger refuses to move to her correct seat?" Miss Cunningham waved a dismissive hand. "It's just a seat." Some of the business class passengers exchanged astonished looks, whispering among themselves. One man, wearing a sleek suit, leaned over and addressed Miss Cunningham directly. "You're in the wrong seat. Just move. Why cause a scene?" But Miss Cunningham shot him a glare, then turned back to the flight attendant. "If you make me move, I'm filing a complaint. My husband works for a major airline consortium, you know. I'll see to it that heads roll." At that moment, it felt as though time slowed to a crawl. Amara looked to Janet, expecting her to do the right thing and enforce the assigned seating. Instead, Janet sighed deeply, then turned to Amara and said in a strained voice, "Miss Winfield, let's step into the galley to talk." Disbelief coursed through Amara's veins, but trying to remain poised, she nodded and followed Janet into the small galley area behind business class. She could feel every pair of eyes on her. In the galley, Janet lowered her voice. "Miss Winfield, I'm so sorry. We don't want any trouble or confrontation." Amara's anger flickered. "But you're creating a confrontation by not enforcing the seat assignment. You're effectively asking me to move so that another passenger who is refusing to budge can stay put." Janet's cheeks reddened. I'm sorry, but Miss Cunningham claims you verbally attacked her. She says she feels threatened." Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. "Threatened? By asking her to move to her assigned seat?" Janet's posture slumped. "I know it doesn't seem fair, but if a passenger insists they feel unsafe, we have to de-escalate. If you remain in business class, the confrontation might worsen and the flight crew can't handle a delay. We're about to close the doors. Please, just sit in this seat in the rear of business class. I'll move you to an exit row seat in economy if necessary." "Economy?" The word hissed out of Amara's mouth. She inhaled slowly to steady herself. "Is this what you do to paying customers who happen to be black women? Or is this standard operating procedure for high skis now? Bump me from first class to business, then try to move me to economy because someone else refuses to sit in their assigned seat?" Janet looked as though she wanted to vanish. "We're not targeting you for your race, aren't you?" Amara countered, voice trembling with frustration. Because that's exactly what it feels like. Janet opened her mouth, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "Let me see what I can do." Before she could leave the galley, James, the lounge employee, entered, looking flustered. "We have to make a call here," he told Janet. "Either Miss Winfield cooperates, or we'll have to remove her from the flight altogether." Amara stared, stunned. "Remove me from the flight? For insisting on the seat I was assigned?" Janet looked anguished, while James simply looked inconvenienced. "We can't delay. The flight must depart on time," he said flatly. "We're giving you an option, Miss Winfield. Take a seat in economy or rebook on a later flight." Amara's mind raced. She had an important speech in Chicago, a meeting with major investors. Missing this flight was not an option. But the humiliation of being strong-armed into economy class, despite paying for first class, was beyond anything she'd experienced. She remembered her mother's lessons about dignity in the face of adversity, about never letting anyone diminish her worth. She shook her head, tears of fury edging at her eyes. "This is unacceptable," she said, her voice low with indignation. James shrugged, as though her reaction was an annoyance. "Then please collect your things. I'll have to escort you off the plane." A wave of shock coursed through her. The flight attendant, Janet, looked on the brink of tears herself, but said nothing to stop him. Passengers peered curiously from behind their seats. Some had their phones out, possibly filming. The glare of phone cameras felt like a spotlight on her humiliation. Realizing the futility of arguing further in that moment, Amara nodded stiffly. "Fine. Escort me off. I'll take another flight. But you'd better believe I'm not letting this go." James motioned for her to follow him, and she walked briskly down the aisle, head held high, ignoring the hushed whispers. Miss Cunningham shot her a smug look as she passed. The humiliation was like a physical weight pressing down on her chest. She fought the urge to snap back, to demand justice right there. Instead, she reminded herself of the bigger picture. She would make a phone call, several phone calls, in fact. She was not powerless, nor was she some invisible name on a passenger manifest. A wave of determination swept over her. As soon as she was off the aircraft, James signaled for the gate to be closed. Doors shut, and the plane began preparations for pushback. Standing on the jet bridge, Amara watched through a small window as the aircraft pulled away. Her seat, first class, 1A, which she had rightfully purchased, departed without her. She reached into her pocket for her phone and scrolled to find the contact who might help her rectify this travesty as soon as possible. This phone call would be the start of a chain reaction none of those staff members could have possibly anticipated. Furious and humiliated, Amara stormed out of the jet bridge and into the bustling gate area. The commotion made her heart pound louder. This wasn't just about losing a comfortable seat. It was a microcosm of discrimination. The gall, the entitlement, the way the airline staff had literally forced her off the flight to appease a rude passenger who refused to move from the seat she didn't even own. Amara's face was hot with anger, but she refused to cry. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. She immediately dialed Mika, her assistant. Mika picked up on the first ring, voice brimming with concern. "Amara, oh my God, you missed your flight. What happened?" Breathing heavily, Amara relayed the entire ordeal, every detail of how she was bumped from first class, verbally harassed, then essentially threatened with removal if she didn't comply with these outrageous demands. Mika gasped audibly. "This is unreal. Have you spoken to Highski's corporate?" "I'm about to," Amara seethed. "I'm not missing my keynote in Chicago. Get me another flight, any airline, any route, but I need to be in Chicago by 4 this afternoon." "On it," Mika said, already typing at rapid speed. "I'll call you back with options. In the meantime, maybe we should let social media know what's happening. This can't go unnoticed." Amara inhaled slowly. She usually kept her social media presence professional, rarely stirring drama. But at this moment, she was torn. Part of her wanted to blow the whistle on Highskis, to let everyone see what they'd done. Another part worried about potential backlash or claims that she was playing the race card. She frowned. Let me handle that carefully. Right now I need to get to Chicago. Mika agreed and promised to text flight options. As Amara ended the call, she spotted a cluster of people behind the gate desk. Among them stood Bianca and James, along with a middle-aged man in a pilot's uniform. They seemed engrossed in conversation. James noticed her gaze, scowled, and quickly turned away. That final slight made her want to walk up and confront them. But she held back, reminding herself she needed a more strategic approach. She'd do one better than an argument. She'd set the wheels of justice in motion. Finding a quiet corner, she dialed the direct number of an acquaintance, Margaret Chen, a senior attorney at the Airline Regulation Division of the Department of Transportation. They had crossed paths at a sustainability conference, where they'd bonded over the complexities of corporate compliance. Although she couldn't ask Margaret to bend the rules, she knew that if anyone could highlight potential discriminatory practices or unfair bumping procedures, it would be her. Margaret answered. Amara, it's been a while. What's going on? Amara spoke in clipped, firm tones, still vibrating with anger. She explained the short version. Forcibly removed, seat given away, blatant disregard for her status. A refusal to address her complaints. Margaret listened intently, and then her tone shifted from casual friendliness to professional seriousness. That sounds outrageous. There are specific federal guidelines regarding overbooked flights, seat reassignments, and discrimination. Let me see if there's a potential violation. Can you forward me your booking details, receipts, and any documentation or witness contact you have? Relief flooded Amara. Absolutely. I also have the names of the employees involved, though I'm not sure if they gave real names. I'll email you everything. Margaret thanked her and promised to review the matter. Depending on what we find, the airline might be in big trouble. If there's evidence this was racially motivated or a violation of standard protocol, heads could roll. Heads could roll. The phrase echoed in Amara's mind, ironically the same phrase Miss Cunningham used as a threat. But in this case it felt justified. She ended the call, then slumped into a nearby seat, heart still pounding from the confrontation. Over the next few minutes she fired off emails. She carefully documented the timeline of events and attached screenshots of her ticket confirmation. Meanwhile, Mika texted flight options, ultimately settling on a last-minute seat with another airline, albeit at a steep price. Amara didn't flinch at the cost. She needed to be in Chicago, and the price was dwarfed by the potential deals she could secure there. She pressed purchase, verifying that she'd board in 2 hours, giving her enough time to freshen up and recompose herself. As she finished the booking, an elderly couple approached hesitantly. They had been on the same flight and recognized her from the fiasco. The wife, a petite silver-haired woman, placed a gentle hand on Amara's arm. Miss, I just wanted to say, we saw what happened. It was terrible, the way they treated you. Her husband nodded, eyes glinting with sympathy. We were so shocked. We even asked a flight attendant why they weren't enforcing the seat assignments, but they just told us to stay out of it. Amara offered a grateful smile. Thank you for speaking up. May I have your names and contact information? My attorney might want to hear your account. She felt a twinge of guilt bringing legal matters into this, but she remembered Margaret's words. Evidence and eyewitness statements were crucial. They readily gave their business cards, wishing her luck. After they left, another man walked up and offered to email her a short video clip he'd recorded on his phone. It's not super long, but you can see how that woman refused to move, he explained. Amara felt a spark of hope. People were noticing, stepping forward. She thanked him sincerely and accepted his contact. By the time she received the video file on her phone, she heard her new flight announcement overhead. She gathered her belongings, grateful to finally leave the scene of her humiliation behind. Although the wounds were still fresh, she found herself buoyed by the kindness of strangers, and her own determination to see this through. She had once again learned a lesson she'd been taught countless times. Sometimes you have to stand your ground and fight, because if you don't, no one else will do it for you. Amara boarded her new flight, slumping into a window seat in business class, this time with an airline that welcomed her politely and offered to expedite her boarding. She didn't disclose the earlier fiasco, but the staff seemed genuinely friendly and attentive, which was a welcome change. As the plane lifted off, she stared out the window at the receding Atlanta skyline, her mind churning with righteous anger and a plan of action. There was one more phone call she needed to make. She waited until the seatbelt sign turned off, then opened her contacts. Scrolling down, she spotted the name, Derek Johnston. He was the vice president of corporate partnerships at Highskis Airlines, someone she'd met at a fundraising gala a year ago. They weren't close friends, but they were certainly more than strangers. They had chatted at length about philanthropic collaborations. She remembered how supportive he seemed about empowering women in aviation. If anyone within Highskis could right this wrong, it was him. Without hesitation, she hit call. The phone rang several times. She suspected he might be in a meeting or an important call. Just as she considered hanging up, he answered, sounding slightly rushed. "Amara, long time no hear. What's going on?" She forced a polite greeting. "Derek, hi. I wish I could say I'm calling for a pleasant catch-up, but this is serious. I've just been forcibly removed from a Highskis flight. Your staff overbooked me, gave my first-class seat away, then tried to shove me into economy. When I wouldn't comply, they kicked me off entirely." A shocked silence. Then Derek's voice softened, tinted with concern. "Wait, what? You're a Diamond Elite traveler. We have a record of your frequent flights. That's insane. How did this happen?" Amara relayed the events succinctly but thoroughly, from the lounge fiasco to the confrontation on the plane, culminating in her forced exit. She omitted none of the humiliating details. Derek listened, occasionally interjecting with gasps or muttered curses under his breath. When she finished, he exhaled heavily. "Amara, I'm so sorry. This is absolutely unacceptable. Let me assure you, this is not how Highskis does business." "That's what I used to think," she said bitterly. "But it just happened, and your employees seemed quite confident this was policy." Derek let out a frustrated sigh. "There's no policy that says we bump Diamond Elite members for someone else. If anything, you should be the last to be involuntarily bumped. And to forcibly remove you? This is beyond the pale. Look, I'm going to escalate this right away. The board meets next week, but I'll get in touch with the executive team today. If these employees acted outside protocol or, God forbid, with discriminatory motives, they'll be held accountable." Amara felt a pang of relief that at least someone in a position of power was taking her seriously. "I appreciate that, Derek, but I also want to make it clear that I'm pursuing a formal complaint. I've already spoken to a contact at the DOT. Derek cleared his throat. "I understand, and you should. I'm not here to talk you out of anything. Let me see what I can do on my end. This is damaging not just to you, but to our entire airline's reputation. I promise I'll be in touch soon, maybe even by the time you land in Chicago." They ended the call on a cordial note, though the tension was palpable. Throughout the rest of the flight, Amara tried to relax, reviewing her speech for the Women in Tech Summit. She forced herself to focus on her upcoming responsibilities, reminding herself of her priorities, her company, her mission, and the countless people who looked up to her. She wouldn't let Highskis ruin that. She arrived in Chicago an hour behind schedule, but still with enough time to make her event. The moment she turned her phone off airplane mode, it buzzed incessantly with text messages and missed calls. One from Mika, who had updates on rebooking reimbursements. One from Margaret Chen, verifying that she had forwarded the necessary documents. Another from an unknown number. She listened to the voicemail. "Hello, Miss Winfield. This is Teresa from Highskis Corporate Affairs. Mr. Derek Johnston asked me to reach out to you personally. He would like a word at your earliest convenience." The message ended with a phone number and an apologetic tone. Clearly, Derek had begun rattling cages. Amara allowed herself a small smile. She had a keynote to deliver in just 2 hours, so she decided to return the call later. For now, she'd focus on her professional obligations. She had an audience waiting to be inspired, and she refused to let the fiasco overshadow that. Nevertheless, the seeds of justice were already planted. Meanwhile, back in Atlanta, Derek Johnston wasted no time. As soon as he hung up with Amara, he marched straight into the office of Highski's CEO, an imposing man named Jonathan Mills. Mills was known for his no-nonsense style, having helmed the airline through turbulent financial times. He looked up with a stern expression as Derek burst in. "Derek, you know we have a meeting in 10 minutes. This better be urgent," Mills said, removing his reading glasses. "It is," Derek replied, a hint of fire in his voice. "We might have a PR nightmare on our hands, courtesy of how some of our staff treated a Diamond Elite passenger. And not just any passenger, but Amara Winfield, CEO of Solar Swift Technologies." Mills arched an eyebrow. "I've heard of her. Shrewd businesswoman. Didn't she just speak at some major environmental summit? What happened?" Derek launched into the story, each detail more outrageous than the last. Mills listened intently, his mouth gradually tightening. By the end, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "This is extremely problematic. And you say she has friends in government and a considerable social media presence?" "She does," Derek confirmed. "Plus, we've recognized her as a top-tier flyer for almost a decade. There's no reason she should have been bumped at all, let alone forced off the flight. This smells like prejudice or at the very least incompetent staff with a severe misunderstanding of our policies." Mills tapped a pen against his desk, silent for a moment. "Who were the employees involved?" "I got a hold of their names from the lounge check-in logs. James and Bianca at the lounge desk, Kelsey in the lounge, and a flight attendant named Janet. Possibly more staff. I've got a meeting set with HR, but I wanted you to know first." Mills nodded gravely. "I'll gather the executive team. We need to conduct an immediate investigation. I want statements from everyone involved by close of business. If we find evidence of misconduct or discrimination, heads will indeed roll. We cannot afford a scandal right now. Our brand is just recovering from last year's customer service debacle." Derek exhaled, feeling somewhat reassured. "Amara is speaking with the DOT. She has every right to. We need to show her we take this seriously, or else this will blow up in our faces." Mills picked up his phone, already dialing. "We will. Trust me. I'll call for an emergency meeting in the next hour. In the meantime, get in touch with Miss Winfield's team. Offer a formal apology, flight credit, restitution, whatever it takes. But if the staff is found guilty of wrongdoing, I'll see them removed from this company. No question." And so the wheels began turning at Highski's Atlanta headquarters. HR managers scrambled to track down the employees from the fateful flight. In the lounge area, James, Bianca, and Kelsey were called in for immediate interviews. The flight attendant, Janet, was also summoned upon landing. Each staff member provided their version of events, some conflicting, some painting themselves as victims, some shifting blame to others. But as management pieced together the puzzle, it became clear that their story had gaping holes. Eyewitness accounts and existing security footage told a different tale, one in which the staff had singled out Amara, refused to enforce seat assignments properly, and used intimidation to force her off the flight. To make matters worse, by late afternoon, Twitter was abuzz with cryptic mentions of a high-profile passenger being mistreated by a major airline. Although Amara herself hadn't posted anything, the few travelers who witnessed the event began sharing snippets of what they saw. The short video clip sent by a bystander found its way onto social media, fueling further outrage. The clip showed a portion of the confrontation, capturing Miss Cunningham refusing to move, and the staff appearing to do nothing to resolve it. Amara's voice could be heard stating calmly that she had purchased a ticket for that seat. The commentary was harsh, many users condemning the airline and calling it a blatant act of racism. In less than 12 hours, Highskis faced an emerging PR meltdown. The hashtag #AmaraVsHighskis started circulating, though not yet trending. But if something wasn't done soon, it threatened to explode into a full-blown crisis. Jonathan Mills, the CEO, recognized the magnitude of the situation. He ordered an immediate press statement to be drafted by the communications department, expressing regret and confirming an internal investigation was underway. He also demanded daily updates from HR on the status of the staff involved. By the time the sun set on Atlanta, the staff, James, Bianca, Kelsey, and Janet, were suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. None of them went home happy. Each pointed fingers claiming they were just following policy. But High Ski's official policy clearly indicated that Diamond Elite members could not be bumped without offering significant compensation or alternative arrangements, and definitely not forcibly removed for no valid safety reason. To corporate's horror, they learned that Seat 1A had been specifically reserved for the white passenger at Miss Cunningham's request, spurred by her claims of being a friend of the airline's CFO. Claims that turned out to be baseless. The staff had accepted her story at face value, ignoring the obvious fact that Amara had a legitimate ticket. Anxiety rippled through the entire airline's workforce. Rumors spread quickly. A high-profile passenger was discriminated against. They might close down the entire lounge staff. Corporate is furious. The fiasco overshadowed even the usual hustle of daily operations. Employees whispered about their own concerns. What if they, too, made a mistake that cost them their jobs? The tension was palpable, a ticking time bomb fueled by the knowledge that once Amara Winfield made her move, the public outcry could be enormous. Days passed. Amara had delivered her keynote in Chicago to roaring applause, sealed a promising deal with potential investors, and even found time to enjoy a brief dinner with an old friend. But in the background, she and her legal counsel corresponded with High Skis. She received daily calls from Derek, who provided updates on their internal investigation, and assured her the airline was taking full responsibility. She gave them the space to do their due diligence, but made it clear she wasn't backing down. At Margaret Chen's suggestion, Amara also formally filed a complaint with the Department of Transportation, citing racial discrimination and violation of overbooking rules. She compiled eyewitness statements, recorded testimonies, and collected all relevant documentation into a neat digital file. The thoroughness of her approach impressed even Margaret. "You've got a bulletproof case, Amara," she said confidently. "They'll have to make amends one way or another." About a week later, Amara received a private invitation from Jonathan Mills to visit High Ski's headquarters, under the premise of personally apologizing and discussing next steps. Although suspicious, she agreed to fly down, this time on a different airline, curious to see what they had to say. She arrived in Atlanta dressed in a sleek charcoal suit, her posture exuding quiet strength. At the reception desk, she gave her name, and the receptionist almost jumped up in alarm. "Right this way, Miss Winfield. Mr. Mills is expecting you." They escorted her to a large conference room on the top floor, walls lined with panoramic windows, offering a sweeping view of the city. Inside, Jonathan Mills stood alongside Derek Johnston and a small team of executives. Jonathan extended his hand. "Miss Winfield, thank you for coming. I'm Jonathan Mills, CEO. We appreciate your willingness to meet." Amara shook his hand curtly. "Let's skip the pleasantries. I'm here because I've been told you have some resolution to offer." Mills nodded. "Yes. First and foremost, on behalf of the entire airline, I offer my deepest apologies. This incident shouldn't have happened, and we take full responsibility. We concluded our investigation, and the staff members involved have been terminated for violating company policy and, more importantly, for engaging in conduct that goes against our core values of diversity and respect." He gestured to Derek, who handed over a thick folder. "This folder contains the official documentation of our investigation," Derek said solemnly. "Their statements, the lounge's CCTV footage logs, testimonies from other passengers, everything. The evidence is irrefutable. They singled you out and knowingly disregarded your legitimate seat assignment. The flight attendant also admitted to caving in to Miss Cunningham's threats and removing you instead, out of fear of delaying the flight or causing a bigger conflict. In short, we found no excuse to keep them employed here." Amara digested the information. While a sense of vindication flickered within her, she also felt the weight of it all. "So you fired all of them?" James, Bianca, Kelsey, and Janet, Mills confirmed. And we've issued a permanent ban on Miss Cunningham as well, as soon as we can verify her identity. She used fraudulent claims to manipulate our staff. Amara took a measured breath. She thought of those employees, likely out of work. She had no sympathy for their discriminatory behavior, but she recognized the magnitude of the consequences. What about reforms? Steps to ensure this doesn't happen again to someone else? Mills cleared his throat, nodding. We're retraining all lounge and flight staff on our non-discrimination policies and proper overbooking procedures. We're also instituting a stricter check for seat reassignments, especially concerning Diamond Elite travelers. We're revamping how we handle passenger disputes. Never again should someone be removed for trying to occupy the seat they lawfully paid for. He opened another folder, sliding a document toward Amara. We'd also like to offer you a restitution package for the ordeal. Full reimbursement of your ticket, immediate upgrade to our highest frequent flyer tier for life, and a substantial sum as compensation. We hope this helps signal how serious we are about making this right. Amara glanced at the figure. It was significant. Likely more than the cost of a single first-class ticket, enough to show genuine remorse. I appreciate the gesture, she said slowly, but this isn't just about money. I want to see real change. I want to make sure you support diversity initiatives, not just with words but with action. Sponsor some events for women of color in tech or aviation. Encourage staff development programs that foster inclusion. Derek and Mills exchanged looks, nodding eagerly. We're open to it, Mills assured. We'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust. Amara exhaled, letting the tension dissipate. She had come prepared for a fight, but it seemed High Skis was genuinely contrite. All right, she said firmly. We have a path forward. I'll review these documents with my legal team, and if everything aligns, we can settle this. But know that my stance against discrimination is unwavering. The meeting concluded with polite handshakes and a sense of resolution. As Amara stepped into the hallway, she saw a few employees peeking from their desks, likely aware she was the passenger behind the swirling rumors. She squared her shoulders, projecting the confidence that had taken her to the heights of the corporate world. For all the drama, she had emerged victorious. The fallout from the incident was swift and definitive. The press statement from High Skis acknowledging the firings and admitting wrongdoing circulated widely. Commentators on social media praised Amara for standing up for herself and exposing discriminatory practices. Others bemoaned a culture of corporate greed that bowed to the loudest, most privileged voices. Hashtags circulated, but as High Skis swiftly owned up to the fiasco and made amends, the outcry didn't explode into a protracted scandal. In fact, many said High Skis' quick response was a rare example of a company taking immediate accountability. For the staff members who lost their jobs, life took a turn. James, the lounge manager, tried to plead his case on social media, claiming he was unjustly fired, and that it wasn't about race. But few sympathized. The video footage and witness accounts painted a stark picture of his complicity. Bianca and Kelsey, likewise, found themselves at the center of local gossip, known for forcing out a prominent black female CEO over a trivial seat dispute. Janet, the flight attendant, expressed regret in a tearful interview for a local station, admitting that she made the wrong call under pressure. But the airline's stance was firm. We do not tolerate discrimination or the mishandling of passenger rights. Meanwhile, Miss Cunningham, the white passenger who refused to move, was publicly identified. It turned out she was a socialite with minor local fame. Her brazen attitude on the plane now stained her reputation, and she lost favor with many of her well-heeled associates. Some invited her to philanthropic events only to uninvite her later. One philanthropic organization she supported quietly distanced itself from her, as donors objected to having a known racist at their galas. For Amara, life went on in a positive direction. Solar Swift continued to grow, buoyed by new partnerships forged in Chicago. She announced a mentorship program specifically aimed at empowering young women of color to pursue tech and business careers. In collaboration with High Skis, Part of their restitution agreement, she set up an annual scholarship fund for women interested in aviation and aerospace. The irony of partnering with the very airline that once humiliated her wasn't lost on the public, but most applauded the move, calling it a step toward genuine inclusion. In interviews, Amara never gloated about the firings. She always circled the conversation back to larger issues: systemic inequality, the importance of speaking up, and the need for corporations to act with integrity. The drama of the seat debacle became a cautionary tale widely shared in corporate sensitivity trainings and diversity workshops. Months later, as she relaxed in her corner office at SolarSwift's Atlanta headquarters, she reflected on the entire ordeal. The memory still stung, how she'd been singled out and stripped of dignity in front of a plane full of passengers. But she felt gratitude for the unexpected allies, the couple who gave their testimony, the man with the cell phone video, Margaret Chen, and Derek Johnston. She realized sometimes it takes a village to fight injustice, and she was thankful she had one. Late one evening, after wrapping up a board meeting, she scrolled through her phone. High Skis had emailed her an invitation to a new route launch event. She chuckled, reading about their expanded focus on inclusive customer service and featuring diverse voices on the promotional materials. The invitation included a personal note from Jonathan Mills. "Miss Winfield, we'd be honored by your presence. Your experience has fundamentally changed our airline for the better. We hope you'll continue to guide us." Amara smiled, setting the phone aside. She'd likely attend, not for the free champagne or the glitzy ceremony, but to ensure that her presence reminded everyone, that respect should never be optional. She had stood her ground, and though the journey was far from pleasant, the result sent a powerful message. Discrimination, even in seemingly minor acts, has consequences. Sometimes a single phone call can change everything. Sometimes karma arrives swiftly, and the ones who wield power carelessly may see it slip through their fingers in an instant. And there you have it. An unbelievable ride that began with a single VIP seat, escalated into a storm of injustice, and ended with a colossal display of karma. In the face of blatant discrimination and hostile airline staff, our heroine, Amara Winfield, refused to be silenced. With one call, she galvanized an entire network of allies to demand accountability. By the end, the staff who wronged her found themselves out of a job. The airline was forced to confront its biases, and major policy changes transformed the way High Skis treated its most loyal customers. This story isn't just about retribution. It's a reminder of how standing up for what's right can ripple through an entire system. If you found this story gripping, show some love. Like, share, and subscribe for more real-life inspired tales. Your support keeps these stories coming, shining a light on truth and justice. Thank you for watching.